Yo, what up guys? In this video, I'm going to teach you guys the best way to write beats in Ableton. Let's go. So I'm going to get started and I'm actually going to cut straight to the chase. I think the best way, hands down, to write beats in Ableton is actually to be writing your beats in audio. A lot of people tend to write their beats in MIDI using drum racks or other drum type plugins, and personally I find it a little cumbersome, inaccurate, and just not quite as cool as writing in audio. I think when you get good at writing in audio, it can actually be faster. You can get results that you couldn't yield otherwise, and overall I just think it's way cooler, the type of sounds you can come up with. And I'm just going to cover all the different ways just by writing a beat. We're just going to write a beat. This is how to write a beat the right way, or the cool way, whatever way you want to think about it. So let's just get going. So in this video, I'm actually just going to write a really popular beat. I'm going to write something at 128. I'm going to write a house style beat because, you know, people like it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start with the kick drum. It's going to be really straightforward. We're just going to create a new track, call it the kick, and we're going to find a cool kick. So I'm actually just going to start with the first kick in my library of kicks I've made, that one there. I'm going to drag it in. And the first thing you can see is with this sample, it doesn't start right on the one, so we're just going to drag that over nice and easy, and we're going to slice it. Now, one way we already have an advantage over MIDI is when you have a drum like this that has a nice little thwack or suck to the beginning of it, you can actually line it up with the beginning a lot more accurately. While if you were using MIDI, you would have to move it over. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, why don't you just cut out that suck in the sampler in your MIDI and it's right on point? Well, I just don't think that's as cool as having this initial sound that I added to it to make it sound cooler. So I can visually line it up, which is a nice bonus that you can't do with MIDI. So we visually lined it up. And I'm also going to fade the tail so it's actually in time with our song. So there we go. And I'm even going to tighten it up further. Perfect. That's something you can't do in MIDI. You can't just easily fade visually and see where things line up based off the timeline playing again, because I can see right here this cuts off. Yeah, you can do it with MIDI and like cut it and change the fades in the sampler, but it's just way quicker like this. Sweet. I'm happy with that. So now we're just going to copy 4 across. And for the sake of this loop, I'm also going to copy this little tail right there. And we've got our kick pattern. Now let's do our clap pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new track, call it the clap, and we're going to start digging through some claps.
A few moments later.
Cool, so I've got something that I like. I'm going to drag it across 4 times here. I duplicated our loop too, just so we have more to work with. And you can see I'm quickly adding manual fades. And what I want to do is on this last one, I want to do a really cool stretched out and longer version of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to consolidate this, Command J, complex, stretch it, and I'm going to cross fade that with the original. I'm going to stretch this one a little further still. And I can even hear I want to use a piece of this clap as a piece of percussion right here, which might have been harder or taken longer to do with MIDI. And perfect, we'll paste that over here. Not bad, sound pretty cool. I just think we achieved cooler things that we couldn't have already achieved. So I'm happy with that. And let's start to bring in, say, some cymbals. And this is where working with audio is cool too, is I could actually grab some sort of loop from my library of hi-hat loops I've made and do something a little cooler with it. So. And I'm just gonna start testing stuff out. Not bad. I'm liking that idea actually of combining them on the same track. That's actually nice and easy. Sounding pretty cool. And one advantage here too is I actually want to start manually cutting and fading these out of the way of the kick, just to make some room in the mix and kind of get things pumping and breathing. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn the warp mode on for all of them, turn the beats mode into forward facing beats mode, and I'm going to tighten up our beat just like that. And what that did is it kind of created almost like a volume gate where on every transient, because we're in transient mode in the beats warp mode, the volume is actually going to ramp down a little bit, make things tighter. Not bad. So what I want to do now is I want to add maybe some other percussion, maybe a cymbal, a crash, something like that. Let's go with a crash. Let's do that. Let's see what sort of things we can do with audio with a crash. So let's try something like that. Turn it way down. And let's duplicate this loop in length too, because we're not going to want the crash every single time. I'm pressing Command-Shift-D for that. Nice shortcut there. Delete that, pop that out. And what I want to do is actually want this thing to pump a bit when it gets hit. And I'm actually going to manually do that by chopping and fading. And the cool thing is too, as the tail goes down, I was kind of liking the tail. I could actually do this here where I could actually turn up our tail to compensate in volume. I can visually see it move up, and I can duplicate that across. And maybe it would stop on the last one and continue afterwards. Let's give it a shot, see what it sounds like. And on this last one, we're going to quickly reverse. Another advantage is you can do quick reversing of your samples. We're going to reverse that crash into that last clap. I like it. We got some added texture on there. And what's really cool too, if you really want to add texture, this is an audio effect, not an audio thing, but I'm going to show you guys anyways just because it's a cool little trick. I want to add some texture, so I'm actually going to set the auto pan to the rate of our root note of our song. And I know that's G, for example, and if I set that to 49 Hertz, that pulse is actually the same as our root note. Adds a bit of texture in there if we dial it back. Solo this thing adds just a bit of texture. So one thing I have noticed, however, is since we introduced all these loops, our beat isn't sounding as tight. Here's pretty much the biggest advantage of audio, and the reason I like it is the ability to consolidate and add little microfades to make things sounding nice and tight. So what we're going to do, consolidate it, and let's go in and just start looking and see where things are interfering with the transient of our kick. And we're actually just going to start chopping and fading all this. This is going to take a minute, but bear with me. It's going to be worth it. I'm actually going to duplicate our loop so we can get a little before and after. So I'm just going to do it on this portion here. And this portion here, the purple portion, will be the original. So let's zoom back in there. And I'll even really go the extra mile, do some little cuts where the cymbals are. You can see, for example, visually that there was some sort of transient that dragged over there, and that's going to take away from the transient of our kick, which we want to be the main focus in all our transients. So it's just going to be going in, manually fading, cutting things like this, getting it out of the way of our kick drum to really, really tighten up our beat. Also, for example, I can manually turn down this hit here. I'm not saying volume changes is something only audio can do. Obviously, a lot of these things you can do in MIDI, but I find it a lot speedier, more accurate, and overall actually more inspiring working with audio because you can actually visually see what's going on. Wrong piece there. I'm even only going to do it the first half. You see and hear that that's just feeling a little sloppier. I don't know what it is. I just don't really like it as much as this. Also, for example, I want to add some variation to our claps I'm hearing. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to detune them all a little slightly and have a bit of a different detune for all of them too. And this is actually going to give a really nice human feel to things now. It'll just kind of, you know, mix things up, shake things up a little. Let's try that out. I can even feel a difference already between this first half and this second half. This second half just isn't sounding quite as tight. So I'm actually just going to copy the top part over the hi-hat pattern and then copy over a couple of these crash fills here. I'm liking it. I think it's just got a better texture. It's tighter. Something about it I just prefer. Listening back too, I think I want to add a cool reverse to our kick here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab a bunch of my percussion here, and just any old percussion. I'm not even going to listen. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to place it randomly. So I'm kind of liking some idea here. I don't know what I'm hearing yet. it's cool just being able to drag it in and just start manipulating. You can't really do that in MIDI. I mean, you could drop a bunch of MIDI notes and then drop a bunch of percussion drum rack, but I like it this way. Let's move that maybe here. That's pretty cool. Didn't even have to think about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to consolidate that. And we'll go in and we'll tidy it up a bit. Here, making room for the transient of our kick. And that's cool, let's just drag it down to compensate. And what's really cool too is if we're hearing that this thing is a little messy, which I'm kind of hearing, we can go in and we can actually start to visually edit it in comparison to other loops. So I'm actually going to turn the grid off here, and I'm going to start to move pieces around to better match our hi-hat loop, because I can hear things aren't quite as tight, and it's just that easy to now start to move things around visually, which I thought we were kind of lacking with MIDI. And even though MIDI does have the obvious red blocks or whatever blocks depending on the DAW you're using, with this, however, you can actually see where the transient starts, where unless you perfectly lined them up in all your samplers, it's going to be a little harder. And there we go. I think that should be tighter. Much tighter. So we can actually copy that, delete that, and pop it over. So there, for a quick recap, I really like working in audio because you have all the different manipulation options. You have the options to fade, you have the options to warp and stretch for cool textures, you have the ability to visually see and match, you have the ability to chop in fade things so there's room for each other, make room for certain things, make sure they're shorter. I just find it's a lot accurate and a lot tighter, and you have a lot more control and manipulation. I'm not saying MIDI's bad. If you write your drums in MIDI and you prefer it, stick with it. I'm just saying this is really cool because you can actually get really nitpicky, really tight, and you can do a little more creative things. I just think you can get more creative with it. MIDI's a little finicky. There's things you can do with this that I think's a lot better, and there's things I haven't even gone into that I think's just a lot better. I just think it's more advantageous overall, and I just recommend trying it. Try it for a while. See what sort of things you can do. Maybe you find you like a hybrid of the two, but personally, I like this the most. Now, before we go though, I'm sure a lot of you are going to be complaining like, oh, Kermode, there's a problem. You can't hot swap. Well, you can actually hot swap. I'm going to leave you guys with that because that's the biggest complaint I get from people is they say that copying around clips, full MIDI clips, is a lot easier for them. Well, I don't see what's so hard about just highlighting all your drums and moving them around if they're all in one area. And then if you do need to hot swap, say I didn't like my clap, I'm going to hit view up here, I'm going to go to my file manager. I'm going to manage my set. I'm going to view files. I'm going to locate the clap. It's going to be clap 9 right here. I'm going to hot swap it. I'm going to find a new clap. I'm going to hit enter. And oh, what? Oh, there we go. It switched. It switched it for me. And if this one here, this stretched one's causing a problem, same thing, view, file manager, manage set, view file, number 9, hot swap. We're gonna go back to where we were. We're gonna find clap number 3, enter. Oh, and did it keep the warping? It created a warped version of it. I think that's really cool. It actually takes the actual stretching, the warping you did, and as you hot swap, it keeps it. That's really awesome. I think that's really cool that it keeps that stuff. And actually, let's see. Oh, it kept the detuning, kept the different pitching. So it actually hot swaps with the pitch information, the stretching information. So it's actually, in a lot of ways, just as good, if not better hot swapping than when you're with MIDI. So again, it's really advantageous. The only things I find are disadvantageous are the ability to copy entire clips, but it's up to you. I personally find once I started doing this, I haven't really gone back. So there we go. In my opinion, that is the best way to write beats inside of Ableton. Let me know what you guys think though. What are the advantages for you? How do you write beats? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, drop it a like, hit subscribe because I'm going to be coming out with more, and make sure to share it because this channel's new and I want to spread it. I want to teach you guys really cool things. So thanks again. I'm Kermode and I'll be back soon with another tutorial. Peace.